I'm very happy because I have a dear friend with me, Sophia, that I know her a couple of years through she expert an initiative that brought women experts to be known to policymakers, to the media, and so on. So, Sophia, thank you for being with me and accepting the invitation.
Thank you, Sophia.
Sophia is like an expert in gender equality, and Sophia would like to give you the floor to just talk a little bit yourself, as your background and so on.
Sure. Well, I am currently the Gender Technical Specialist for World Vision Canada, working remote based in Cyprus. I have just completed my thesis into a publication on women's organizations for peace. I'm very excited about that. It was a 7-year labor process.
Very long.
Long process, and I think it's very telling from my experiences of what that means for women in academia. And I am very passionate about women, peace, and security, and in particular, women living as refugees.
Okay, so that's great. You did a lot of research then for these 7 whole long years with your thesis. And let's get started with some questions I have for you, because it's my first time interviewing somebody with the gender equality expert, and I have some questions because this subject is very dear to me. As a woman in science, we have so many challenges, and because of our gender, we have sexual harassment, from sexual harassment to ignoring and isolation in the university and the research center. So my first question is, what is your input regarding women in STEM, in science, and gender equality? What is your thoughts, your information?
Well, thank you for that question. I think about that in terms of how women participate in STEM and what opportunities we're offering young women and girls and in schools the opportunity to engage at an early age, and then preparing them all the way through into academia. And what I find is, I think it's all well and good in the beginning with young women and girls, engaging them in STEM, and it has become quite a hot topic in Cyprus, that everyone is doing STEM, for example. However, once young women go into academia and focus on science, they have quite a few barriers, and that comes with funding. It comes with the lower participation rates of female researchers. In Europe, for example, for Cyprus, it's 37.3% of female researchers.
Wow. So
this was the data from from 2017 for Cyprus. But we're looking at the fact that women, when we are at an age where we are either primary caregivers to our children, whether we are primary caregivers to the elderly in our lives, there comes a point where the academia and the institutions that be are not as supportive, and actually not supportive at all in the work that we're doing. And I think that really comes up, and especially at the top, the level of the participation representation of women is quite limited, if not at all. I just saw the other day there were 3 panels to discuss the coronavirus within the health system, and also engaging other sectors like the economy, science, etc. And they were all men. And so I was just looking. I'm like, so did Cyprus run out of women experts? Did they run out of women scientists? And of course the answer is no. So the representation of women scientists out there presenting their work is not as visible as it would be for their male counterparts.
You are just so spot on, because in women in science, we say, sorry, no more manual, which are manual and made for men. Sorry. So yeah, that's just spot on, saying we need panels with women as well. So my next question is about gender equality and the difference between nations, because I guess different level of achieving the gender equality. And we live in Cyprus with both we both do, but you are work also in Canada. Maybe you have this insight, this
Sure.
difference between
Yeah.
the two natures or across the globe.
Sure. I think before you can compare countries that are obviously vastly different in all sorts and shapes and sizes, I think it's important to discuss intersectionality. So how does your ethnicity, race, class, age, gender, sexuality, and also ability/disability impact your experience? And that piece is very important because the way somebody like myself engages in Cyprus is very different than a Greek Cypriot within a middle upper class living in Cyprus, if they're a man versus being a woman. Those are very different lines that are being played. If they are coming from a lesser than socioeconomic background, that plays a role. Age plays a role. I know that once you hit 54 plus, I'm told that it's over for women researchers. And what does that mean in the larger sense? So when I compare Canada to Cyprus, I immediately think of, when you ask that question, I immediately think of A, intersectionality, and B, the representation, the political representation and participation of women in the Canadian cabinet, but also women in leadership positions, whether that's at the executive level. The health minister of Canada is a woman. She's a woman of Asian descent. She's an Asian Canadian, and as you know, Asian Canadians have a rich history in contributing to the development of Canada. However, I also don't want to. I'm cautious to give Canada sort of that extended praise because we're also doing quite dismally when it comes to participation and representation of Indigenous women. The rates of, Indigenous women that are being killed every day and murdered at such high percentages is quite real. So I think that these pieces play a role. When it comes to gender inequality in Cyprus, I'm also thinking about the gender pay gap. I'd be very interested to find out how companies and organizations, especially now when this era of social movements where we've catapulted, we're all in a pressure cooker and now everything is coming out, the dirt under the rug is being uncovered. And I'm very curious how organizations, companies, academia is going to reconcile this when it comes to addressing the gender pay gap, for example.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. But the thing is that we need actions, not words. Because, if you apply, they say, we don't take any, we don't consider gender equality. We are all for to solve it. But at the end of the day, there's no action to that. And my final question is about education and career opportunities. You are a remote worker, so that actually enabled you to work in Canada in your field, I guess, of expertise. And maybe that's actually one women science to, find the career opportunities they would like to have when they work in countries that they don't have so much opportunities, like also Cyprus, maybe that example. So, I mean, at the end of the day, what actions can we take to just try to close the gap finally, like in personal level, also in the government or institutional level?
Yeah, sure. Well, at the government level, we have female representatives, female MPs. I think it's really important to go to your MP and discuss this issue of how are we going to have more women in political leadership? How are we going to have women in leadership positions, period? How are we going to have women scientists at the level representing Cyprus nationally and globally? And how is that going to work if we're still stuck in a discourse that is not allowing half of our population to thrive? I think that's at the detriment of the nation as a whole. I also think it's really important. I mean, I work remotely from home. I think it's important to have a conversation both in the academic realm, also within government, about social services. There's such a lack. The foundation of social services does not allow for affordable childcare, for example, childcare that supports working mothers, and it's going to at least provide a foundation. And I think one of the reasons being that we don't value domestic work. value the invisible labor, the emotional labor that women scientists who are child caregivers, who are primary child caregivers, who are primary givers of the elderly and the rest of their families, they might even be the breadwinner of the family, support. Yeah. And I think those are really important conversations to have. I think also protesting manels or the manel. Yeah. I think those days are over. I think there's going to come those days of women being suffocated or not made space for. I think it's time to take that back and try to do that in a way that is going to, provide at least our young women and men the opportunity to grow in a world that is gender equal.
Yeah. Well, that's the dream, to live in a world that is there is equality and the gap has closed. And just let's close maybe with a quote, final quote, maybe giving hope or advice by you.
I would love to give some advice. Sure. I can definitely give advice. Look, I mean, I'm a woman in academia. I'm a woman researcher, or I'm also a mother. I'm also juggling various hats and various roles. I think one of the things is to ask and look for flexi time, part-time work, and employment, as well as remote work. I'll tell a personal story that may or may not inspire you. A couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, I was unemployed. I wanted to spend more time with my daughter, but I also wanted to keep my CV open and full and bountiful, and showing that there were not many gaps in the time period that I spent away. What I did was I started doing short-term consultancy, no matter what they were in my fields of expertise. And I'm very grateful for the women that helped me get there, which is very important. And also reaching out to, let's say there's a job in your field and you're looking at it and your location is New York, and you're like, oh, I don't know if I can move to New York. Ask the employer, apply, and also engaging with various sectors and various organizations, and being aligned with them and reaching out to organizations. So what I did was I reached out to the organization I was really keen to work with, that I'd worked with previously, and said, I'd be really keen to do this, but I can do this remotely, and I'm willing to travel, let's say 60% of the time. And that was great because their bottom line is safe. They don't need additional workspace in their organization. Okay, now with COVID and now the trend is working from home has been now becoming more commonplace. So I've been very lucky and very blessed in the sense that I've been able to advocate for myself simply because of looking and searching and pulling for various options for myself. And I think we don't know until we try that. I know it's not easy. I have shed a lot of tears over this, but I'm here to say, and I stand firm in saying that it's possible. And there are many, many women next to me that brought me to this point. So I just want everyone to at least know that.
Wow, that's so inspiring, motivating. I think a lot of women will, maybe I should. I think for me at least, that you talk to my heart, and maybe I will try that, reaching that organization I want to connect with for employment or, collaboration, and just, hope for the best. You never know.
Yeah, and Constantina, it might not even be that full-time job.
Yes.
Maybe it's a part-time something. Maybe it's collaboration on a certain project, or it's joining a network within your field of geology and starting to network that way, and then building a rapport and writing and publishing with a fellow scientist. I think these are the ways we start. But of course it takes time and tenacity as well, but it's there. And I wished I had somebody to tell me this 10 or 15 years ago when I was really struggling.
Well, we are glad that you told us now. So we can act now after your advice. Thank you, Sophia, for everything. It was a very great interview. I'm just closing her impact now.
Okay, keep inspiring.
Make science your superpower, everybody. And I will see you next time with another episode.